Hello and welcome to the Builder's Bench, where we break down common issues with today's automatic transmissions. I'm Alex Chrissy, editor of Transmission Digest, and with me here is Rino Partipilo from ATSG, who's our technical expert for these series.
Thank you, Alex.
So for our next two videos, we're going to take a look at common issues with the Ford 10R series. For this time, we're going to look at a two-wheel drive Ford F-150. So what's the story with this one, Rino?
All right, so we're going to look at a Ford F-150 that is a rear-wheel drive unit, okay? And the customer complains that we cannot get this thing out of park, okay? This is a drive-by-wire, so there is no mechanical connection between the transmission and the push buttons to take this thing out of. It has push buttons to go from park, reverse, neutral, and drive. So it's towed into the shop and the rear tires are locked up on this thing. Now there is a manual release on this thing, and the shop pulled the manual release and they were still not able to move this vehicle. So what they decided to do was they lifted up the truck, pushed the truck inside, and they took a look at it. When they lifted it up, they disconnected the manual release from the lever at the bottom. That is only the mechanical connection to it, is emergency release for it. And they still were not able to turn the rear drive shaft on the thing. So what they decided to do was to take off the rear drive shaft to see if the rear tires could move on the thing, and now the rear tires can move.
So what does that tell us?
Well, that tells us that the problem has to be inside the transmission. Since it's no longer connected to the rear differential and the rear differential is able to turn now, we know we have a mechanical problem inside the trans. So the next thing we told them to do is to drop the pan and let's see how bad the transmission is. Well, when they dropped the pan on this thing, to their surprise, they found little to no metal inside the transmission, as you can see here. But what caught the technician's eye was the parking rod spring seemed to be very loose. Okay, so knowing that it should have a little tension on there, they decided they wanted to check that. So what did they do? They ended up having to drop the valve body, pull the roll pin out of the linkage, slide the linkage out of there, and then they had the linkage arm off. Well, what they ended up noticing was that once they got the linkage arm out of there, there is a link park actuator. It almost looks like a golf tee. It was shattered into pieces. So what was happening is when the trans was trying to go into park, or the vehicle was trying to put the transmission into park, with that piece being broken on there, it was not allowing the park actuator to release because it was past the park actuator and it was keeping it locked in place.
Okay, interesting. So next time we're going to have another similar story about issues with the 10R transmission, but there's going to be some key differences. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks so much for watching this episode of The Builder's Bench.